everyone. Good morning. I'm calling the January 11th Finance Committee meeting to order. Excuse me, there has been a request to allow remote participation from members Hart, Desart, and Selman under Section 7 of the Open Meetings Act. If a quorum of the members of a public body is physically present, as required by Section 2.01, a majority of the public body may allow a member or members of that body to attend the meeting by other means. If the member is prevented from physically attending because of personal illness or work employment purposes, so we have 1 out for illness and 2 out for employment purposes. So like I said, that's member Desart, member Hart, and member Salmon. So if I can have a motion to allow those 3 to participate remotely.
Second.
We have a motion by member Schwarzy, a second by member Garcia. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Welcome, everyone. I don't see the other 2 on yet, but I think they may be joining. Oh, member Hart's not going to be in this meeting. I'm sorry. Member Desart may be joining in. Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Chaplin,
Here.
Member Chavez, Member Covert, Member Desart, Member DeCiani, Member Eckhoff, Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Hart, Member Krajewski, Member LaPlante, Member Ozak, Member Pachelski, Member Renahan, Member Rutledge,
Here.
Member Schwarzy, Member Selman,
Here.
Member Tornatori, Member Zay.
Thank you. And member Tornatori is going to be here. He's just running. The traffic was really bad, so he texted me. So he'll be here in a short while. And with that, we would like to move on to our presentations. And we have our Supply Chain Diversity Initiative with Choose DuPage. So welcome Greg Bevelow and Lisa. Welcome.
Regarding our Choose DuPage supplier diversity program for the business community. This initiative was born out of the county's request to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the business community here in DuPage County. So in conjunction with our board and several of our board members who have already stepped up to volunteer their time and expertise in this particular field, we developed a program that we believe align very nicely with what we've heard are the overall county goals for enhancing supplier diversity for women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses to better collaborate with other businesses throughout the county, as well as the county and the efforts that the county puts forth to enhance awareness and outreach within the diversity program. So Lisa is going to go over the details of the program.
Next slide, please. So next slide, please. So basically, the supply chain diversity program stems from our goal from our strategic plan that was approved by our board last year in March, which is really to promote more inclusive and equitable growth within DuPage County. Next slide, please. The goals and objectives basically are to promote commercial collaboration within DuPage County. We want to provide businesses with a way to access local suppliers and vendors within our supply chains. We also want to, we believe that this program is going to address some of the recent supply chain challenges faced by our businesses. But most importantly, we want to raise awareness for DuPage's certified veteran, minority, women, disadvantage-owned businesses, disabled-owned businesses, and foster connections for these businesses within our county. We want to connect businesses in our county to these businesses. Moving on, please. We have a 4-pronged approach. The first being the supply chain diversity program. Next, please. And basically, the overall program of this is we're going to be developing a database of all certified businesses within DuPage County. And we're going to be tying this to a supply chain analysis report within the county. Basically, what this comes down to is we have the resources, we have the database resources, we have an industry sector supply chain database, and we're able to marry the two and provide this to the business community for their use. This is going to, we're going to be providing reports to any businesses within DuPage County. We also will be creating a website to help businesses access this information. And we're also going to be creating a portal for any DuPage business to become a DuPage diversity partner, which means that they can get any information on these certified businesses or any industry sector information that they need. Moving on, please. We have heard from our businesses in DuPage County that really they want commercial collaboration within the county. This is another component of this program that we believe is super beneficial to our DuPage County business community. We have had companies come to us saying, hey, can you help identify all businesses within our supply chain and perhaps even make connections? We will have the capabilities to do this within this program. So this is going to be a very important program in addition to the supply chain diversity part. Next slide, please. We also believe that this program will be beneficial to DuPage County in terms of procurement and expanding communication to any women-owned, certified, women-owned, veteran-owned, disabled-owned business. Again, we have the resources, we'll have the database for this. So we believe we can help DuPage County meet some of your goals and provide access to this information. And then finally, we will be developing, really the most important part of this program is education, outreach, and programming. So what we're going to be doing is educating the DuPage business community on doing business with these certified companies, conveying what the overall impact of this is on our regional economy. But we also this is going to be important to raise awareness to any, say perhaps women-owned business in DuPage County that is not certified, that wants to become certified, what the costs associated with it, how you go about doing it, and who you connect to get certified. So programming is going to be a large component of this program. We've talked with the Women's Business Development Center. We've talked with the Small Business Development Center at the College of DuPage. They are on board. They will help with programming, and they will be the key in getting companies who want to seek certification certified. And finally, we really cannot do this program without measuring the success of the program. And these are just a number of the key performance indicators that we will be using to measure the success of this program. It's going to be how many companies can we get certified? Who are we connecting? You know, how companies who are certified are getting business. So we're going to be tracking all of that. And I think I failed to mention, but part of this also is we're going to be doing a very strong social outreach campaign and social media campaign on top of it. So we are requesting $75,000 to over a 1-year period to do this project. I don't know if we will reach the $75,000. So we would love to ask for it in increments. The main bulk of the program will be the database, the website design, and also the supply chain analysis that we will be providing. But it will include administrative costs, and it will include social media and outreach as well.
Just to wrap up, as Lisa mentioned, much like we did with the Reinvest DuPage program, the CARES program, and the ARPA funds, we believe first that these funds these are ARPA eligible funds. And number one, and number two, this would not be a tranche of funding. This would be like we did with ARPA and the CARES Act. As we get a bill, we submit those bills associated with the program to the county from a reimbursement perspective. So this would simply cover the costs. Our initial analysis indicates that 75,000 would cover it, but that would be a not to exceed number. And I really just want to emphasize the importance. One of the key components of this, perhaps the most key component of this, is educating the business community in DuPage County, the women-owned business community, the minority-owned business community, the veteran-owned and the disabled-owned business community on how to get certified in order to not only receive, for lack of a better term, preferential status with county procurement, but with state procurement and with federal procurement. We will not be a certifying agency. There are several certifying agencies throughout the state that do the certification. The challenge is those businesses don't know how to go through that process, and it's our intent to A, educate them on it, and B, as always, act as that concierge. But we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from anyone? Member Chavez and then Member Renahan.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I just wanted to thank Choose DuPage, Greg Bedala, for being so instrumental in getting this program off the ground, for taking the initiative to really push it forward. I think it's going to allow us as a county to overcome these barriers. So I'm a huge fan of the program. I really want to thank Choose DuPage for taking such initiative to help us get this ball rolling. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Renahan?
Thank
And then
you.
member Say.
And, thank you, Choose DuPage, Greg. I know it's been a couple of years that we've been talking about, really putting a spotlight on diversity and inclusion and actually digging into that strategic plan that we all approved, 3 years ago? So, anyway, just wondering, is in terms of timeline, what are we talking about here?
We would think that the entire program would be up and running in a 4 to 6 month window. The first key component of it is the database itself. There's a myriad of databases out there that would let us know what businesses are located in DuPage County. Distilling and refining that database for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and then creating that database, which we would then marry to a Choose DuPage existing database. We have a ton of information on our existing bases of business in DuPage County and how we can help those businesses buy from minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. The direct answer to your question, 4 months.
Great, thank you. Member Zay and then member Rutledge. And then
Thank you,
member
Madam Chair. What, can you define more what a certified business is?
Yeah, so the state of Illinois has several criteria that define a minority-owned, woman-owned, disadvantaged, disabled, veteran-owned businesses. There's multiple categories, but for instance, 51% equity stake in a business owned by a female classifies that business as a woman-owned business. Same exists for disabled veteran and DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise. Minority classifications include African American, Hispanic, Native American, Indian American, and I believe women-owned. And it's a pretty simple definition in terms of simply establishing a majority stake of ownership in that company.
Thank you.
A small business, and then there's classification as well, members, for small business. This program does not really, it's not a small business program, but the majority of the businesses within the DBE community are small businesses as classified by the state of Illinois.
Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. Greg, well, thank you for your presentation this morning. As a woman-owned business owner, what kind of costs are going to be the burden of the business community to be part of this program?
Well, to avail yourself of the services that Choose DuPage would provide for the business community in DuPage County, the cost of the business would be nothing. The cost to get certified as a minority-owned or a woman-owned business, it's basically, as you can imagine, paperwork, some red tape, and in some cases, some legal work. We've already secured the services of some of the board members at Choose DuPage who can help with that process. So it's really just the fees that are associated with it. I just want to be clear on one thing, especially for women-owned and minority-owned businesses. The biggest hurdle to their success in doing business with the state of Illinois, doing business with local government, is the certification process. Simply getting certified. Oh, it's too overwhelming. I don't want to do it. Oh, I won't get any business anyway. I'm not going to go through the rigmarole. It's been my experience that is absolutely not true. And when they're given the opportunity to get certified, their business opportunities grow. And then we're hearing, as Lisa pointed out, we are hearing more and more from the big business community, for lack of a better term, in DuPage County, that they want to do, they have corporate social responsibility programs, and they want to do business with minority-owned and women-owned businesses. It's part of their corporate mandate. So what we're trying to do is help facilitate that for those businesses. That would be where the database kicks in.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Rutledge, Member LaPlante, and then Member DeCiani.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Lisa and Greg and Choose DuPage for the presentation. I really appreciate your emphasis on the educational aspect of this, because I know through the CDC Community Development Committee that when we are trying to help people apply for certain programs, grants, and that sort of thing, to your point that you just said, Greg, sometimes the biggest hurdle is understanding the application process and how to go through it. So preemptively already focusing on educating people is going to, I think, really vastly contribute to the success of this program. So thank you so much for today's presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I will add that, as I mentioned before, we have talked with the Small Business Development Center at the College of DuPage. We have them lined up to do programming. I mean, really identifying what the basics are in terms of how you go about certifying, you know, as a women-owned business, the cost, there's different costs within each certification. So we have strong partners lined up and ready to go to provide that educational outreach.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Member DeCiani.
Thank you, Chairman. Lisa and Greg, I appreciate today's presentation. My question, first, before I ask the question, I want to say thank you for the component of encouraging people to become a DBE or minority-owned business, because I think oftentimes talking to a lot of my clients, they don't have the status, but they may be woman-owned, but they just haven't gone through that process. With that said, what is the total number of businesses in our county, just in general? And then what percentage of those are currently certified as a minority?
I'll let Lisa answer in case we get it wrong.
Well, no, that's actually what we're getting a number on in terms of total certifications. It is hard to identify, but I believe we have identified a company where one of our corporate partners here in DuPage County uses for their procurement and their initiatives. And I think they will be providing us with a solid number of everyone who's certified. I mean, you have different certifying agencies, so it's a matter of compiling all that. And so we'll be able to give you that number in the near future. But in total, there are 95,000 total businesses in DuPage County, representing every industry sector. I think we have no industry sector is more than maybe 12 or 15%. So we have a very diverse industry sector in DuPage County, but again, 95,000 businesses.
And are we thinking a percentage of that, 10%, 20%, 5%, 2%?
I would say roughly maybe 10%, or if that 5 to 10% is my guess. So again, we'll have a number here shortly.
And do we have a ballpark cost, like for a woman to decide to become is it $5,000? Is it $2,000? Is it a range cost to actually become certified?
My past experience, I've seen it from as low as the application fee, which is about $500, to as high as 10,000 when you factor in the legal and the financial and the other requirements that are put on the business in an effort to achieve that status. You made one point, Member DeCiani, if I may amplify on it just real quickly. Some of you may be asking, you're saying there's all these other state agencies that do this certification and you're not proposing doing the certification. Choose DuPage applied to be a hub in the Community Navigator program through the state of Illinois. We were not successful in that grant application. And what we heard loud and clear from the business community in DuPage County is when they go to the state of Illinois to try to get these resources, this concierge, this shepherding and this collaboration, there's no response. I'm not blaming the state. I'm just saying that it's a big state and there's a lot of businesses that are trying to do this. And if we want to focus on diversity and equity and inclusion for the business community within DuPage County, we believe this is a very strong jumping off point.
Great, thank you. Thank you. We have Member DeSart and then Member Ozak.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Greg, for your presentation and for getting this initiative rolling. And I have to applaud Member Julie Renahan, who has been pushing for this initiative since early in 2019. So she's really been the impetus for this. My question is this: for $75,000 for 1 year, you said it'll take 4 to 6 months just to set the boundaries and get this up and running. So that only leaves 6 to 8 months to actually push forward this initiative and to educate and to promote this initiative. What happens if there aren't enough businesses helped in that 6 to 8 months? Do you foresee this going into a second year? Because once you establish all the website, the database and all that for 4 to 6 months, then there's only a short period of time to actually reach out to those businesses. So I'm wondering about that small, short timeline and then extending that timeline to a second year. Thank you.
Thank you, Member DeSart. The year starts after the program has been kind of validated and is up and running. So we do the work on the front end. We get the website going, we get the database going, we schedule the outreach, we do the events. we submit any costs, which that portion would be minimal to the county for reimbursement. And then that 1-year window of which I spoke that the 75,000 would cover would begin after the 4-month startup period, if you will.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understood from Lisa that that $75,000, the bulk of it would be for the website and the database and the programming.
Correct, which is all kind of internal infrastructure that Choose DuPage has working and rolling right now. So I'm sorry if we were unclear on that.
So that's not $75,000. I'm sorry, Greg.
Well, I guess then to answer your second question about, is this a 2-year initiative? We have the key performance metrics in place. There's more detail behind how we measure success. We would come to you on a regular basis with the results of the program. If you think the program is working and there's additional costs associated with taking it to the next level, scaling it down, keeping it going, that would certainly be something that you would ultimately have the authority over whether or not to approve or not approve.
So if the website and the database and the programming are not part of the $75,000, how would the $75,000 be spent?
No, they are part of the program. The database would be an actual purchase acquisition from industry experts and folks who put those databases together, along with the
It's
stuff that we
annual
have
fee,
now.
correct.
There's an annual fee, and the website and hosting the website and all of that kind of stuff. Those would be components of the 75,000. I guess I'm not being very clear. What we're saying is we build that, we submit to the county for reimbursement, then we turn the program on, and the program lasts for a year after that with the outreach and the social media and the concierge work and the shepherding of the businesses.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg. That answers my question.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Ozak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to clarify, the $75,000 does not directly benefit these businesses who may be trying to get certification. For instance, covering, legal costs seem like they would be an element, et cetera. And is there any provision to think about doing that? Because that would seem to be a roadblock that
Well,
would be a problem.
we would be concerned about the ARPA eligibility of that to make,
Okay.
we would have to work with finance and the folks who are the true keeper of the keys with respect to the ARPA funds. Number one, and number two, we thought about that, but from a precedent standpoint, what we're doing right now in order to address that is working with the Choose DuPage network of businesses, our board members, all of whom have said, let us know how we can help. So if somebody needs legal assistance, our intent would be to direct them to any one of a myriad of services along with those business partners. Chase Bank has offered to step up, Navistar has offered to step up, all of the legal services and the finance folks have offered to step up. So we would direct them to our partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. I have a couple questions or comments. So thank you so much for the presentation. I'm glad to finally see we're actually taking action on this, so it's really positive. But last June, the General Assembly, they passed House Bill 453, in which testing districts with property levies of more than 5 million are to make a good faith effort to collect and electrically publish data on whether vendors and subcontractors are minority owned, women owned, veteran owned, or small businesses. And that was effective immediately. And I know I've been asking, for us to disclose, try to get that information out there. I know Member Renahan has also been asking for that. So looking back in my emails discussing this, it looks like we were going to, staff was going to be looking at the language of the bill and try to develop an approach to comply with the legislation. Do we know where we're on that? Because I think that's a really important component of all of what you're doing, because it'll help us with the tracking and the reporting. So do we have any idea where we are with update on that House Bill 453? Just where we're at.
Not too many specifics on the House bill, but what I can tell you is even beginning this week, we are starting to put together an internal team. In fact, we have that's working on a DBE program. Chris Snyder, myself, Mary Catherine, Nick, Cheryl,
are going to be meeting, and we're going to be talking about how we can start a study. Where we are in the beginning stages of doing an RFP for diversity study. We're also going to be talking about, you might recall, within our budget, we did budget for a diversity coordinator. We're going to be talking about whether we're going to hire a diversity coordinator or utilize a consultant, somebody who can come in here, help us and, get on the ground running, if you will. So not too many specifics about the bill itself, but how we're approaching this.
Okay.
And we're also interested in the software, the B2G now, to be able to track that. We're going to be demoing that very soon.
Okay, because maybe we'll need to get IT eventually involved, maybe the
Yeah.
auditor and.
Anthony McPherson is on the team too.
Okay, great. All right, well, great. Thank you, because I think that's really an important part of all of this whole program. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Lisa, for all your hard work. Appreciate it. Yeah, oh, go ahead, Member Zay.
Just to follow up on your question, on that bill that was passed, what kind of funding did the state give us to do this?
It probably was probably no funding.
No funding. Okay. So it's an unfunded mandate from Springfield. Thanks.
Well, we're supposed to make a good faith effort. So it's, I think we should try to make that effort. It's important information. And it would really help the board, would let us measure where we are in our contracts and handing out contracts to minority business owners. So thank you. And then we have our next presentation. We have our OSHA employee vaccine testing mandate discussion. So I think we're gonna have Margaret and Nick. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm just going to give a couple opening remarks and I'll turn it over to Margaret to actually do the presentation. So today we're going to be talking about the federal OSHA mandate for vaccination or testing among employers of 100 or more employees, which we do fall under. A couple points of clarification. First of all, we're only talking today about our own employees. This isn't a county-wide program. This is just for our own internal employees. And I can't stress enough how quickly the landscape is changing on this one. I know the Supreme Court is hearing this as we speak. They have not issued any kind of opinion or a stay. I know last night the state of Illinois adopted it. So the landscape is changing dramatically. But right now, given with what we know, we are moving forward as if the mandate's in place because that's the latest information we have, and that's how we're going to proceed with the presentation. Clearly, if we receive different direction based upon the Supreme Court ruling, and Margaret will talk a little bit about that in her presentation, we will adapt accordingly, potentially even delaying it, coming back to county board and going from there. So with that, I will turn it over to Margaret to give the presentation, and we'll have at the end, we'll answer any questions you may have.
Good morning. So as Nick said, we wanted to talk to you a little bit today to just let you know and alert you that we are preparing as though the mandate is going to be confirmed. And so under the OSHA emergency temporary standard, this preempts state and local laws, but as Nick said, the governor has noted already that he will be adopting and expecting employers to comply and mirror the OSHA regulation. It is for covered employers with 100 employees or more. And what it requires us to do is a couple of things. We are to assemble a vaccination roster in a confidential manner. And up until this point, we have not on the county board jurisdiction side asked people if they've been vaccinated or not. So we will do that. Provide paid leave for employees who wish to obtain the vaccine. So as we craft the policy that we'll be bringing to you in the coming weeks, it does have a provision in there that will allow someone who has not yet been vaccinated paid time to do that. Mandate face coverings for employees who are not fully vaccinated. Currently, the county board has a mask mandate for us all, regardless of vaccination status. So that would not be a new mandate even here on under your jurisdiction. Must be worn. So for someone who is not fully vaccinated, the mask coverings would be required to be worn if they're not in an office with 4 walls and a ceiling. Requires employees who are not fully vaccinated to submit to weekly testing, except employees that exclusively work remotely or outside. And we don't have employees who are exclusively remote workers or outside workers. Next slide, please. The OSHA, again, as Nick said, OSHA will not issue any citations for non-compliance. And so these dates have kind of been pushed back because they had original dates from December, then there was a stay, then the stay was released, and then now it's at the Supreme Court. So what we do know from the dates, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals lifted this stay, and then there was an appeal to that, and so now the Supreme Court has heard arguments on Friday, the 7th, but they still have not, we have not gotten any final decision from them. So as Nick said, we will still be moving forward. We can always pause, we can always claw back, but we are moving forward as though the mandate is going to be required. And the Illinois OSHA has given some additional deadlines. So you have till the 24th of January to develop your policy, and then you have till February 24th to comply with the weekly testing. So they pushed the dates back a little bit. And you know, if you've ever dealt with OSHA, as long as they know you're putting forth a good faith effort to comply with their rules, they don't rush to penalize. So we'll be moving in that direction. Also, employers must publish and make available COVID vaccination policy. So they have some posters that they provided to us that talks about employees' rights for a protected workplace. But there's a separate posting that also talks about penalties, which can include financial and jail time penalties for not, if you provide false information to your employer, if you say you've been vaccinated and you have not. So we have some required postings that we will distribute to all of our departments for posting purposes. Must also provide additional notices. So that's what we'll do. Report work-related COVID inpatient hospitalizations and fatalities. We still have to report accidents and fatalities anyway. COVID is just adding to the list, and we've already been doing that. We provide our COVID list almost, if not daily, certainly weekly to the health department for contract tracing and record keeping. So we already do that. And must make available to employees the aggregate number of fully vaccinated employees at the workplace, along with the total number of employees at that workplace. So we will collect that information, which we have not done. And if someone wants to know how many employees in the Human Resources Department have been vaccinated, we will be required to provide that, and we'll have that information as we begin to collect it. Next slide. So current staff recommendations. So currently, as we have compiled our teams, we're working with our health department. They currently have a policy on weekly testing. So we're working with them. We're working with our state's attorney team to develop our policy. And so we will have employees must submit proof of testing to their immediate supervisor. So they're required to take a confirmatory test administered by a healthcare professional. It can't be, if it's a self-administered test, it still has to be witnessed. And so tests must be collected no earlier than 72 hours ahead of the first shift. Rapid point of care home tests do not qualify under the emergency order. Employees will be compensated 1 hour per week to support completion of the testing. Employees pay for the weekly testing process themselves. And in working with our health department team, we'll provide a list for people where they can go and get testing. I just noticed yesterday on my way home, last week it was a T-Mobile, last night it was a testing place. So like literally overnight, it turned into something completely different. So I know that more testing sites are popping up as people are trying to find ways to get tested relative to trying to meet not just this mandate, but employer requirements. Employees that test positive do not report for work and must follow the CDC isolation period. After isolation, the employee would not be required to retest again for 90 days. And that is in accordance with CDC guidance. Next slide. So again, currently we're working on our policy. Elected officials and county departments are establishing their own separate confidential rosters. Some of our county-wides already have rosters. We've learned over the last week through meetings and discussions with them. We continue to encourage remaining unvaccinated employees to get vaccinated if they choose to do so. Again, we'll establish a testing program, process, and roster and routine with our departments, and assemble and provide detailed policy information to county employees. And we'll bring that policy back for board approval, of course, once it's finalized and ready to go. And our plan to do that, unless there's a change under the Supreme Court will be for our next meeting. Next slide. I already jumped ahead. So again, our plan is to bring you a policy by the next meeting. We're working, because we have not taken any account of who's been vaccinated. We might have a big list of testers. We might have a smaller list of people that need testing. I think Ms. Adams told us in the meeting last week, out of her staff, she only has probably about 20 people who are not vaccinated out of almost 140 people. So we may find that this is not as monumental of a task. I know that the convalescent center, the care center, has a large group of their staff that is vaccinated. So Janelle and her team have already been doing testing and have already been monitoring and noting who's been vaccinated. So some of our large departments have already done a lot of this work just in general. So, and again, we'll either, IT will work with us to develop some in-house process to collect the data, to collect vaccination status and a copy of the card, or we are looking at several softwares that allow people to use an app to take a picture of their card and upload it into a database. So once we know the volume of tests that we have to monitor or manage, we'll decide if we can manage it in-house, the storage of that data in-house, or if a software of some sort will be needed. That's my last slide.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Okay. MemberPachelski, then MemberZay.
Don't we know how many employees are fully vaccinated?
We do not. We have not collected that information. Has not been a requirement that we know.
Do we know how many employees are getting tested each week though, correct? Is that number going up?
I know we currently do not have any testing mandate or requirements, no. So we made, early on, we made it, there was we call Sarah Hunt was like our vaccine superhero. So the health department would call and say, I got vaccines, and like literally Sarah would run in and say, there's 10 over there, who wants to go, get in your car, get over and go. But we did not keep any kind of list because we weren't required to.
Does this stay consistent or does it vary on a weekly basis?
I'm sorry, say again?
Does the testing stay consistent on a weekly basis, the number of people being tested, or is it changing?
We don't do, currently we don't do weekly testing.
Right.
But each person, ideally, we have the list of people who need to be tested, and they will be able to, for purposes of tracking, hopefully be in lockstep so that the department has some kind of routine going. But that'll depend on, where people live, their ability to get to the testing site. Not everybody's schedule is the same. So we have some departments where people work different shifts. So, but ideally we'll be able to create some kind of rhythm and routine. Hopefully it'll be a small list, but nonetheless.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, MemberPachelski. MemberZay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got multiple questions. First, how can we ask people what their status is? Doesn't that violate any kind of HIPAA laws at that point?
We work with state attorney at O'Connor if you want to.
I mean, because when can we file that first lawsuit?
HIPAA only applies to health insurance providers and healthcare providers.
So we can't ask somebody's status. Do we have any exemptions for religious or health in the policy?
We do not.
That they
We're not
can file
mandating the vaccine.
like every business has?
We're not mandating the vaccine. We are asking people what their vaccine status is. So there's not really a need for an exemption. You would ask for an exemption if your employer was mandating that you get the vaccine. And as Connor said, relative to confidentiality, I can ask your vaccine status. I cannot ask you if you say to me, no. Well, is it because you have X medical condition, or is it? So as long as you don't force people to divulge confidential medical information about themselves, just simply asking me my vaccine status is a yes or no. And the emergency order allows me to even say to you that I don't want to even tell you what my vaccine status is. So I don't even have to tell you. That just means that I then go into the weekly testing pool.
Okay. Does this bring up any collective bargaining issues with our unions?
We will talk to the union, but it is a federal and subsequent state mandate. So we will advise them and just certainly let them know that we have to do this. Yeah, we talk to them.
Okay, and then the last one is, I mean, this board didn't want to increase people's insurance by $5 a month. Why would we not be providing testing then if those people who have to get tested weekly, why doesn't the county pick that up for our employees?
That would be a board.
Obviously, that would be a
decision. I
major
don't
cost
know.
for the employee.
I don't know.
So as far as testing goes, there are multiple free testing sites out there. So employees do have the ability to go out and get tested. And ultimately, that's a decision by the board, whether you want to provide paid testing kits out there or just have that ability for the free testing.
I mean, we couldn't work something out with the health department for our employees.
I mean, the health department
testing.
has multiple free sites. I mean, so what the policy will do is give them paid time off to go get tested.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have member Renahan, member Garcia, and then member Ozak. So go ahead, member Renahan.
Yeah, my question is kind of along the same lines. It said 1 hour off a week to test. I mean, to me, this kind of seems like we're rewarding people for not being vaccinated, kind of like, I want to go out for a smoke break and, you know, you don't smoke, so you don't get the break. So is this something that's mandated by the state or the Fed, or is this something that just is started in the county? I mean,
The paid time off for
the 1
for
hour.
testing is
Yeah.
mandated as part of it.
It is part of
It
the
is
state or
mandated as
federal,
part of it.
so we can't change
Nope.
that. Okay. And I guess I'm also concerned as members say, in terms of, you know, maybe we should be covering that testing if we are going to require it. And is the health department, have they been contacted in terms of maybe setting up their own site close to campus?
They have, I know that they are currently operating the Villa Park, the Odium. That's their main testing site for DuPage County. And I know that I don't think there's any, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of concerns because on February 9th, theoretically, you're going to have how many more testing that needs to be done across the county, across the country. And this is going to be a very dynamic program. I mean, if it goes into place, obviously our goal is to meet the requirements. What will the lab capability be? What will the testing capability be? We don't know. And so all of that, everything's going to be changing quite quickly on this.
Yeah, I mean, I just have kind of an objection to giving people an hour off a week because they haven't been vaccinated. So maybe our legislative committee should take that up.
Okay, member Garcia and then member Ozak.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Nick basically answered what my complaint was going to be, is that we're giving them an hour of time off to go get the testing for this, which the tests are actually free. So we are offering them free tests already. You know, I know that this is frustrating. I feel bad for Margaret, actually, that she has to do this. It's frustrating for all of us as a board. But, you know, my suggestion is everyone just get the shots, just get vaccinated. The problem is if we don't get vaccinated, it just causes more variants. And this is going to just continue on. So if everybody just gets vaccinated, like, you know, and we're just all supportive of this science, I think that this would be a lot easier for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, member Garcia. Member Ozak.
Thank you, Nick and Margaret. My question is regarding the testing. Am I on? Okay. My question is regarding the testing requirement. When they say you cannot use home tests, I believe I read in the last 24 hours that there may be a requirement that private insurances have to cover, I think, 8 tests a month. And is the private or the home test is not included in is that the federal mandate? The Osha mandate is saying that you can't have a home test?
It has to be witnessed by an independent third party.
Independent,
that's
so
in
not a
the
family member,
legislation.
et cetera. Okay. Thank you.
Read the article regarding the health insurance
Yeah.
and how that's going to be handled. I don't know if it'll be flexible spending. I have a call into our Blue Cross Blue Shield rep, Julia Conkey, to find out if they have to submit. I read that where you have to submit a claim in order to do that. And we also have a call into WEX to see if people can use their flexible spending card if they enrolled in that.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, I just want to thank you for what you guys have been doing these past months. I really want to thank you.
Member LaPlante and then member Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that this is moving at the speed of light and changing every day. So with that caveat, has there been any discussion about revisiting the fully vaccinating fully vaccinating status to include the booster?
Right now, the federal government CDC recognizes that fully vaccinated is the 2 shots without the booster. Once again, the landscape is changing minute by minute here, and we will follow whatever laws are put in front of us, whatever guidance is put in front of us, we will follow with this program with our employees. But right now, it's my understanding that the booster is not considered fully vaccinated. It's just the first 2.
Okay, so it could change, but there's no,
Absolutely.
as
It-
everything
it
is
could-
changing,
We
right?
could, it could change while we're sitting here. That's how fast it's been
Right,
changing on us.
right. Okay, yeah, no kidding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member LaPlante. Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you all as well, but I do want to draw attention to the fact that I think the governor just recently put out a warning on those pop-up sites. I happened to go to one last week because I had just a stuffy nose and I thought, what do I have? But it was very shady. I don't know how else to put it. But I ended up just having the test repeated at Edwards to make sure that it was a valid test. I just wonder if we as a county, to some of the points here, need to invest in working with our health department to get a couple sites up for our employees so that they can trust the test, we can trust the test. So I'd like to throw that out there as an option so that we really know that we're sending our employees. I know we're going to create this list, but I think we have to be really careful about where we're sending them. as well.
Absolutely. The list that we create for our employees will work closely with our health department. And I know that their go-to is obviously their own site, the Odium site, as well as some of the pharmacies out there that, you have your typical mainstream pharmacies offering free testing, free vaccine as well. So I know that that's their go-to list. So we'll work with them, absolutely.
Okay, great.
And just so everybody realizes this, think of this as kind of 2 parts. And Margaret and the state's attorney have been working nonstop trying to sort this out. And we'll be bringing a policy through, but really it's 2 parts. One is figuring out the universe we're talking about for vaccination among our employees. Are we talking 400 unvaccinated or 40? That's what we have to figure out. That's step 1. And then step 2 is obviously the vaccination or testing program, which step 1, whatever we find out with step 1 will determine how we do step 2. Can we do it internally with our resources we have, or do we need a program? Is it so big and so unwieldy we need a program, or is it 40 people that we can work manually? And those are kind of the big parts. And after today, based upon the feedback we received, HR and the state's attorney will develop a policy that we'll bring back to you guys in 2 weeks.
That sounds great. And then the only second thing I wanted to say is this, of course, is to keep our employees safe. So I know that it's frustrating for a lot of us to think that people are being rewarded for going, but I think if it creates an overall safety net for our employees, it's worth that 1 hour to let them go. I don't understand why people wouldn't get vaccinated. To me, it's so, incomprehensible. But at the same time, we're going to have a small percentage of the population. Hopefully it gets smaller and smaller as time goes on. But I think that if we are just creating the safety net, I appreciate that for our employees.
Great, thank you, Member Chavez. Any other questions? Okay, yeah, and that's what my point was going to be. All these procedures, so it's frustrating for some people. It's overwhelming, I'm sure, for you guys to have to do all of this, but it really is to keep our employees safe. And I also think that the conversation with the unvaccinated and the vaccinated, it can't be us against them. We really have to just put the information out there and, encourage people to get vaccinated if they can. But, this us against them is not productive in helping the community or encouraging people to get vaccinated. So I think by putting out the information that we do and encouraging it, I think that's the best way to move forward.
The one thing I would like to bring up, so if we get a ruling from the Supreme Court, a stay on it, and then let's say this week, early next week, we may very well not bring something back in 2 weeks. We've got to understand what we're dealing with here and understand the state, what they're doing. So if the landscape changes dramatically, we may not have a policy back if there's a stay on this by the Supreme Court.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, do we have any public comment this morning? No public comment. That is okay. We always welcome it, but move on to,
Madam Chair,
yeah. Yes,
I'm
member
just-
Clark?
a little housekeeping. I'm just wondering if you could vote that, take a vote on whether or not I can Zoom into this meeting. I-
This morning, we voted you in with the roll
Oh.
call.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no worries. Okay, so with that, we move on to Chairwoman remarks. So Happy New Year, welcome back, everybody. I hope you all had a nice, relaxing winter break. Some interesting news. I read last week that the Will County Board is hiring a consultant and they're paying them up to 1.5 million to manage their ARPA funds. Will County has not spent any of their 133 million yet in ARPA funds. And in contrast, DuPage County, our staff has worked so many hours with all stakeholders to develop a really wonderful ARPA plan that includes, responding to the public health emergency, countywide water and sewer infrastructure projects, campus COVID mitigation, economic stimulus, and community assistance. So to date, we've allocated about 138.7 million of those ARPA dollars, and we've spent about 29.8 million. So I really want to commend the members of this board and our staff for doing a really great job on this ARPA funds. And, the board understood the importance of getting those funds out to small businesses, but we also understood the importance of holding the line on spending and keeping a nice reserve of about 40 million for future public health needs. And right now we see that we are in a huge increase of COVID cases, and we really don't know what the future holds, and we don't know the full economic impact of COVID-19. So I just really want to commend this board and our staff for being really great financial stewards of the people's tax dollars. So thank you very much for that. And with that, I will take a motion to approve the regular Finance Committee meeting minutes of December 14th. So we have a motion by, who was that moved? Member Tornatori, and a second by Member Pachelski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We move on to budget transfers. Can I have a motion on FIR 004822, resolution budget transfers 111-2022 from various companies and accounting units? So moved by Member Garcia, second by Member Zay. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We move on to consent. Can I have a motion on change order SOE Software Inc. DBA SCYTL decrease and close PO 2707. So moved by Member Covert, second by Member Chavez. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And with that, we move on to procurement requisitions. And in Member Krajewski's place, Jim Zay will be taking that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 4422, approval of contract issued to Sereno, Romello, and Durkin, provide professional assistance and collective bargaining for the county board, the amount not to exceed 150,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Zay, a second by Member DeCiani. Discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. And on to environmental, Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. I move on ENR 0027-22, the appropriation of funding for the continued operation of the Regional Household Hazardous Waste Facility in the amount of $100,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Rutledge. Is there a second? Second by Member Covert. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Rutledge. We move on to ETSB, Member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve item ETSR 00622, a resolution to adopt the talk group access agreement between the Emergency Telephone System Board of DuPage County and the Illinois State Toll Highway Authority. Recommendation to approve Policy Advisor Committee 5-0 pending Parent Committee approval, which is tomorrow.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Schwarzy, a second by Member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Schwarzy. We move on to Health and Human Services, Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of HHSP 004222, a contract with Music Speaks LLC for music therapy for the Care Center residents, January 12th, 2022 through January 11th, 2023, not to exceed $55,331.12.
We have a motion by member Renahan and a second by member LaPlante. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Renahan?
Thank you. I move approval of HHSP 004122, a contract with Advocare Systems for rental of medical equipment for the Care Center, March 1st, 2022 through February 28th, 2023, not to exceed $175,000.
We have a motion by member Renahan, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Renahan?
Thank you. Move approval of HHSP 0040-22, a contract with Convergent Technologies LLC for fire panel upgrades for the Care Center, January 12th, 2022 through November 30th, 2022, $136,788.86. This is an ARPA item.
We have a motion by member Renahan, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Member Renahan?
Thank you. Move approval of HHSP 004322, a contract with Home Depot for the Care Center for housekeeping and cleaning supplies, January 12th, 2022 through October 31st, 2022, not to exceed $140,000.
Motion by member Renahan. Is there a second? Second by member DeCiani. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Renahan?
All right, thank you. And I have a change order. I move approval of HHSP 0058A-21, amendment to resolution HHSP 005821, issued to Nova Staff Healthcare Services for supplemental nursing. April 10th, 2021 through April 9th, 2022, $75,000.
We have a motion by member Renahan, a second by member Covert. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, member Renahan. With that, we move on to Public Works. Member Ozak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for approval of FMP 003722, recommendation for the approval of a contract issued to Home Depot, doing business as Home Depot Pro, to furnish and deliver housekeeping supplies and cleaning chemicals as needed for the county campus for facilities management for the period January 12th, 2022 through October 31st, 2022, for a total contract amount not to exceed $90,000.
I have a motion by member Ozak, second by member Pachelski. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Ozak.
I move for approval of FMP 003922, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Royal Pipe and Supply Company to furnish and deliver plumbing supplies by the specified manufacturers at discounted rates as needed for county facilities for the period February 24th, 2022 through February 23rd, 2023, for a total contract amount not to exceed $148,007.50 per lowest responsible bid.
I have a motion by member Ozak, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Ozak.
Thank you. I move for approval of PWP 003622, recommendation for the approval of an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois and Burns and McDonnell for professional rate analysis services to conduct an independent rate study for the period January 11th, 2022 through November 30th, 2022 for Public Works for an amount not to exceed $44,100.
We have a motion by member Ozak, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Member Ozak.
Thank you. I move for approval of PWP 003822, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Core and Main LP for meters, installation, AIM system and infrastructure for Public Works for the period January 18th, 2022 through December 31st, 2027 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,749,712 per RFP 2078 PW and 2079 PW.
We have a motion by member Ozak, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, member Ozak.
Thank you.
We move on to transportation with member Pachelski.
Morning, Madam Chairman. I would move to approve DTR 3922, a local public agency agreement between the County of DuPage and Illinois Department of Transportation to approve Hobson Road, 63rd Street sidewalks for an estimated county cost of $300,000.
Start.
We have a motion by member Pachelski, a second by member Covert. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Move to approve DTR 3222, a resolution for a local public agency agreement between the County of DuPage and Illinois Department of Transportation to approve 63rd Street at Main Street for an estimated county cost of $60,203.
We have a motion by Member Pachowski, a second by Member Covert. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to approve DTP 3522, recommendation of approval of contract to Singh and Associates for professional traffic signal design engineering services upon request not to exceed $400,000.
We have a motion by Member Pachowski, a second by Member Covert. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Member
Thank you.
Pachowski.
Move to approve DTP 3422, recommendation for approval of a local public agency engineering services agreement between the County of DuPage and HR Green for professional construction engineering service in connection with the installation of new sidewalk along Hobson Road, 63rd Street for a contract not to exceed $224,482.
We have a motion by Member Pachowski, a second by Member Ozak. Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to approve DTP 3222, recommendation for approval of contract agreement to West Cheshman, Pascaldo and Lampo to provide professional legal services to assist with environmental issues as needed for a contract not to exceed $80,000.
Motion by Member Pachowski, a second by Member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to approve DTP 3022, recommendation for approval of contract to CDM Smith Inc. for professional engineering services, Cass Avenue corridor study for amount not to exceed $241,755.22.
The motion by Member Pachowski, second by Member Renahan. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Move to approve DTP 2922, recommendation for approval of contract purchase order to Arians Company to furnish number 2 gravity EV series mowers for the Division of Transportation for a contract not to exceed $62,529.90.
Motion by Member Pachowski, second by Member Garcia. Discussion? Oh, Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a minute to commend everybody that was a part of this decision, that we are moving away from gas guzzling, environment polluting machines in our county and looking for what benefits our environment. So thank you so much on this initiative.
Thank you, Member Rutledge. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to DTP 3322, recommendation for approval of contract with Baxter and Woodman Inc. for professional design engineering service upon request of the Division of Transportation for a contract not to exceed $1,500,000.
Motion by Member Pachowski, second by Member Ozak. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Move to approve DTP 3122, recommendation for approval of contract to West Tishman, Pascaldo and Lampo to provide professional legal services to negotiate highway authority benefit agency applications not to exceed $80,000.
Motion by Member Pachowski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Move to approve amendment to DTR 405B-19, which is amendment to resolution DTR 405A-19, a local public agency agreement, amendment number 1 for federal participation in the County of DuPage and Illinois Department of Transportation, Gary Avenue, Great Western Trails, St. Charles Road to Army Trail Road for an increased cost of $420,930.26.
We have a motion by Member Pachowski, second by Member Ozak, and Member Renahan. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm struggling with this one a little bit. I talked to Chris Snyder about it. We had originally approved a certain amount for county participation in the amount of like $192,000. This was, I think, 2016. It was originally vetted. Now we're looking at taking on $429,000. Additionally, that's an increase of 61.5% in terms of county participation. I'm just wondering, in terms of a procurement situation, did this ever come back to the board? Because the work has already been done. And it seems like we have a little bit of a blank check when it comes to how this went through. Is there anybody who can address this for me?
I think Chris Snyder's on and he will answer that. Chris, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So, yeah, so a little bit of history. We did enter into an agreement between us and actually the state of Illinois So this project has 75% federal, 25% county participation. There was actually two elements of it. We had agreements with the railroads. So this project involved 3 separate railroad crossings, and we had an agreement with the railroad that was actually, kind of administered and processed through the ICC. And essentially, it obligated the county to 100% of all costs associated with those improvements. The estimated costs for those improvements were 2016. The project, because of design, but mostly land acquisition, actually didn't get constructed until 2020, 2021. So on the railroad side, part of it is just the lapse of time. You have an estimate that was 4 or 5 years old, in addition to other amenities that the railroad had to do with regard to the physical improvements. On the path side, we did, as part of the path, we did run into extra costs. We assumed the path we would just dig down 6 inches and then build the path back up. Turned out that the material underneath the grass at the time, if you will, wasn't sufficient. So we had to keep digging until we found something solid. So we had an increase in that. Anytime you work around a railroad, you have to have flaggers. So all the work is part of the path. That is typically not in the contract. This was a federal project. And so the state of Illinois does not put that information in there. In terms of a bid. So that's always going to be an extra, the railroad flagging cost. Then we ran into unsuitable materials, an unknown underground storage tank, and other elements. So typically, as these projects develop, you're going to have pluses and minuses. And this is at a time where we're very confident in terms of the final construction costs, both on the railroads. It's a final billing, as well as on the construction side. So that's why it's coming forward now.
Did it ever come through transportation or county board since what, 2016? Or, who is approving all these overages? That's what I'm wondering.
Right. So kind of a unique thing is that this is a federal project. So it's actually let and awarded through the state of Illinois. So they're the contracting authority. So all approvals for extras or increase actually get processed through them. So they're the awarding authority when it comes to transportation projects that are federal. We enter into agreements, but the contracting authority is actually with the state of Illinois. So any increases in quantities or decreases are processed through the state of Illinois.
But didn't you say that it was separate agreements then with the railroad to take on 100% of the cost? And then that's where the main costs, the overage came in.
So of the 400,000 plus or minus to 429, about 103 of it is with the railroad. And so we were paying invoices as they were submitting them to us. And when they submitted invoices over the summer, they exceeded the not to exceed amount that was approved originally by the board. So we had asked them to provide some backup and documentation. And that's where we found out, some of the additional things they ran into, their actual costs were what they were.
I guess I just feel like at some point this should have come back to the board at some level, or maybe transportation committee. This is, I think we like our paths, we like our, bike trails and all the rest of that, but I think this is maybe it's gotten a lot out of hand.
Thank you, Member Renahan. Member Ozak.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of not having an increase like this to be put in front of us all at one time, I understand about the state of Illinois, but going forward with these projects, is it possible, first of all, this is a complete and total bill for this project. There will not be any more expenses, correct?
From the railroad side, 100% complete. On the actual construction, we're 95, 99% done with the project, but we still haven't agreed to final quantities with the contractor. So there's always going to be some back and forth. But what I guess what I would say is at this point, we're confident with the 326 as being a good solid number at this point. I don't expect any major changes for that, but I can't say there won't be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed, nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. We move, MemberPachelski.
Thank you. Move to approve amendment to DTR 229A21, amendment to a resolution DTR 22921, agreement between the County of DuPage and Progressive Rail Incorporated for railroad crossing improvements at York Road between Seaver Court and Foster Court to increase the funding amount of $5,637.12 to resulting in amended cost of $36,030.62.
We have a motion by member Pachelski, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Member
And
Pachelski.
lastly, amendment to DTR 315-821, which is issued to Cody Construction for DuPage County Campus Ring Road Improvement to increase the funding $12,061.61, resulting in amended contract with $959,061.61.
Okay, we have a motion by member Pachelski, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Ms.
member Pachelski. And in member Krajewski's place, member Zay has so kindly agreed to take the finance resolutions.
Who can say who can say no to you, Madam Chair? Thank you. I'll move on FIR 4322, abatement of special service area number 31, 2021 tax levy, the amount of $1,566,829.
We have a motion by member Zay and a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FIR 2822, acceptance of time extension for the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency Water Quality Management Grant, time extension only.
We have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FIR 4422, authorization transfer of $16,266 in the budget to the county auditor for fiscal year 2022.
We have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FIR 3522, acceptance of DuPage County Community Development Commission Agreement number CD 21-15, amount of $1 million for air handling unit replacement, DuPage Care Center.
We have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FIR 3422, approval of the use of ARPA funds,
Second to start.
$5,400,000 for the judicial office facility annex expansion.
I have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Desart, and we have discussion. Member Renahan, did you want to? Oh, you're seconding. Okay. A second by member Renahan then. Member LaPlante, did you have a question? Oh, okay, great. Okay, any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to combine items F through K. These are acceptance and appropriations and additional appropriations.
We have a motion to combine the items F through K. We have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 3622, acceptance appropriation only, Department of Commerce and Economic Development, amount of $1,993,392. Move on FIR 3022, acceptance appropriation, U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, amount of $370,899. Move on FIR 2622, acceptance of time extension, DuPage County Health Department, heroin opioid prevention and education task force. Move on FIR 4522, additional appropriation for county clerk GIS fund, amount of, this is like, shouldn't even, $1,947. Move on FIR 4622, additional appropriations, sale and air interest fund, amount of $110,000, and FIR 4722, additional appropriation for sale and air interest fund, the amount of $71,000.
We have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FI 0522, consideration and action of an ordinance providing for the redemption of payment prior maturity, $2,535,000 general obligation refunding bonds.
The motion by member Zay, a second by member Ozak. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FIO 622, an ordinance establishing boundaries for county election precincts.
Motion by member Zay, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Member Zay, do you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we didn't get any presentation on this whatsoever. I mean, this is remapping all the precincts in DuPage County. There was no input from the county board. We received an email Thursday night from the clerk's office. I mean, if you look through the legislation that was passed, and I highlighted it, the county board is mentioned, I can't tell you how many times, and for us not to have any input on this whatsoever, I think it just doesn't reach out for our bipartisan effort that we did in redistricting, that these are just put on us. We weren't really given any time to look at them. Unfortunately, as the county chair for the Republican Party, I was summoned to a meeting last Tuesday and basically shown the maps and said, this is it. No input whatsoever. I just think this could have been done much better. I've been in contact with the clerk's office with Scott McKay since December, asking questions about this. You know, we didn't hear anything until last week. I mean, we have to pass this week without, you know, any input from this board or anything else. You know, I just think it's not a bipartisan effort on the clerk's part at all on this. So I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Member Zay. Member Tornatori, did you have a question?
I did. I have a question and a comment, Madam Chair. Thank you. I too share Member Zay's concerns with this legislation, if you want to call it that, from Springfield. And I don't blame the clerk per se or the election division. It got kind of thrust upon us, but it's essentially a political attempt to change boundaries within precinct. It's really not governmental. And given that, I think that at a minimum, the county chairs of both the Democratic and the Republican parties should have been a part of the process. My understanding, they weren't. My understanding, none of the township chairs were part of this process. And these precincts directly affect the townships and the county. Additionally, none of us on the county board who are expected to vote on this were consulted either. I looked at this legislation and I have some questions for, maybe during county board we'll have it, but perhaps in the interim, we can get answers, because the legislation also says that the clerk and we must take into consideration new construction in dealing with how these precincts are to be allocated. The precincts, as you're aware, are going to go from 930 precincts in the county to 607, with 1,200 voters per precinct, up from approximately 800. That's a significant change to anyone who's going to be campaigning for any office, whether it be for township committee person, county board, state legislature, etc. Also, I have a question regarding our voting equipment. It's an economic question, but we recently spent somewhere between $8 and $10 million on new voting equipment, presumably on the assumption that we were going to have 930 precincts with polling places that were going to have printers in each of those polling places. That was the reason that the Hart proposal was more expensive than the others. If we're going to go from 930 precincts to 607, does that mean we're going to get a rebate of about a third of the cost of those printers? Or are we going to have a garage sale for 300 printers that we no longer need because we no longer have 323 precincts that we had prior to this legislation? I mean, I think it's a legitimate question. I don't know that the election division contemplated this legislation coming from Springfield. I know it's been kind of on the back burner. If they didn't contemplate it and they knew it was coming, then perhaps we should have taken it into consideration and before we ordered as many printers as we did. But I'm going to presume that we have a printer for every precinct, that if we now have 300 plus fewer precincts, we either should get a rebate for the money that we spent, or we're going to have a lot of printers being stored that aren't being used. So I have a variety of questions here. I'm not casting blame on the clerk's office. They got this thrust upon them, but once again, we find ourselves being mandated by the legislation, which says we shall do this and we shall do that as a county board, or they refer to it as a board of commissioners. I'm not going to be forced to do anything that I don't have information on because Springfield has decided that we're going to change our precincts up when none of the political parties or the political participants were ever a part of this process. And that goes for both parties. I mean, I think that the Democrats, as well as the Republicans, were not a party to this process. Now I've got, those of us who may or may not decide to run for office, whether here or otherwise, now are faced with a completely new set of precincts where people are going to be expected to deal with a third more people than they were before, and we weren't a part of the process. So it's just an abomination as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to vote no now. Presumably I know I'm going to vote again at county board, but I really do think that perhaps someone from the election division should come and talk to us and maybe answer some of these questions before we take an up or down vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Tornatori. Member Chavez, Member Renahan.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I mean, talk to this board. I spoke with Jean yesterday. I've got a lot of concerns as well because over the weekend, my phone was really blowing up from a lot of our local precinct committee people, our township chairs. I think there is a lot of concern over these new lines, and I think there wasn't a lot of time for us to review or any time really at all. And now we're expected to vote on it today, but I've received input where people are requesting, can we make changes, much like we did to the county board maps? And I just feel like we've really been put in a bind where we're so close to the deadline. But I'm just hoping that we can keep an open mind and maybe get some changes made to these maps.
Member Renahan, Member Covert, Member Krajewski.
I think a lot of good points are being made here. I think that we're in new territory, with this legislation. And I think we might have missed the boat from a leadership perspective, because if you read the legislation on its plain face, it says the county board over and over and over. I think probably what should have happened in retrospect is that an ad hoc committee should have been appointed, much like what was done for redistricting. So then the county board, members could have this conversation. I think really, if you look at what the clerk is charged to do, is to notify the State Board of Elections of redivisions, adjustments, or changes. So we've, basically the clerk has kind of come in riding in on a white horse trying to help us out, because I think we did not fulfill our obligation under the new statute. And you know what? Not purposefully, but I think, just as a learning curve, this is new legislation, as was pointed out. So, I'd like to hear more though from everyone else.
Thank you, Member Renahan. Member Covert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also echo what my seatmate, Member Chavez's concerns. I also spoke with our District 5 constituents and our townships, and they expressed a lot of concerns about these maps. I felt like we didn't have a lot of time to review since we did receive them Thursday, and obviously there's no blame placing on anyone, but I just don't feel comfortable today.
Thank you. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I saw this on the agenda, you weren't going to have a presentation. I didn't really have much backup. So I had a few questions, and I did talk to the clerk's office. Thank you to Hannah for answering some of my questions. I share some of Sam's concerns regarding Springfield. If you go back in history, I mean, they changed the legislation many years ago to shrink the size of the precincts. I'll use Downers Grove Township, for example. It used to be forever 128 precincts, then they went to 132 and then 144 and then 156. Now they're back to 106. I mean, so Springfield, shares a lot of blame down there. They made them bigger and they made them smaller, back to bigger. So when I talked to the clerk yesterday, he said that they spent 60 days trying to put these precincts. I'm not sure why it took that long, but maybe there's a lot involved in it. Years ago, I had the hat that Member Zay had as the chair of the Republican Party, and I was brought into the clerk's office, both as a Downers Grove Township chair many years ago, and then as a party chair for the county, as was the Democrat. And we talked about how we worked with the staff as they were making the maps. It sounds like, and I was trying to ask yesterday, that didn't really take place. And it sounds like just from some of the comments that are coming back from some of our board members that they weren't involved in the process. So I know staff was drawing them, but at that time they were drawing them, they probably should have been reaching out to either township chairs or party chairs for both parties and having
when we were discussing the lines in the map. It take place, and we're here now, and we have to vote on this thing. It's done by sometime this week. But again, I know I was part of the process for years when they did look at maps, when they were expanding the size of them, getting input from both sides of the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. And any other questions from members? Okay, thank you. So to kind of follow up on Member Renahan's comments, I did speak with Nick yesterday about this. And, you know, this legislation was passed, I think, November 15th. The maps have to be approved by this Friday, so there's not a lot of time. But it does say the county board shall change the boundaries of the election precincts after each decennial census. So what I'm thinking, I talked to Nick, and maybe Jason will talk about this too, but I think in our, when we do our summary of our redistricting committee for the next time, that the redistricting committee stays together until we do these redistricting of the precincts after the census. So I think we kind of missed the ball a little bit. The county board did, not through nobody's fault, just this was all brand new to us. And I really do think that the county clerk really stepped up and took on this huge task. And it is a big task to go from 930 precincts to 607. That's a huge undertaking. And I know it did take a lot of time because I talked with the clerk's office yesterday as well. So Adam Johnson, would you like to address the committee here?
Sure. So first of all, I guess I'll start with Member Tornatori's comments, because I do think that, you know, at the heart of this, you know, this is based on the legislative mandate that we received from Springfield. There was legislation passed that mandated that the size of precincts be increased. So, you know, however anyone in this room feels about that policy decision, that was the mandate that was given to the counties of the state of Illinois, that we were to increase the number of voters per precinct as close as possible to 1,200 voters. So right then and there, you know, that was going to mandate a significant reduction in the number of precincts we had in DuPage County. Legislation also contained several parameters for how those precincts were to be drawn. You know, that they were to be township based, that as close as possible, the precincts were to be contained entirely in one congressional district, entirely in one state Senate district, so on down the list to municipal ward. And it was also, you know, mandated that the precincts be, you know, created in as contiguous of space as possible for the convenience of the voters. And again, that was passed in November with, you know, a set of district boundaries, including the congressional and legislative boundaries that were not given to us very far in advance. I'm sure you've all been following the legislative and, you know, legal back and forth on getting those boundaries in line. And, you know, if you follow what's going on in, you know, other counties throughout the state, this has been a tight timeline that's been, you know, dropped upon all county elected officials, you know, to have our staff sit down and look at a county-wide map and figure out how to, you know, accommodate 600 precincts that fit the parameters, you know, put out by the state. Did take, you know, many hours of dedicated work by our staff. And these are, you know, the people who, you know, work with the precincts on a day-to-day basis, who are familiar with all of the ins and outs of the district boundaries, also trying to, you know, make these boundaries in a way that logically makes sense in terms of where, you know, voters are located and how they're grouped together and where polling places are located. So yes, I think, you know, Member Tornatori captures it fairly accurately that this was a fairly difficult task, you know, from the outset to accomplish in the amount of time that, you know, everyone was given to do it. I do think that our staff put together very solid maps, and while there hasn't been a lot of time for, you know, as many outside parties to review those maps, from the feedback I have received, I haven't heard much in the way of actual substantive complaints of how the maps were drawn in terms of meeting the state legislature's requirements, that in terms of fitting the precincts per the legislative and congressional districts as the legislature mandated. We haven't heard a lot of feedback of people complaining that you drew those lines in an illogical way, that you didn't meet the legislative requirements. Now, what is unavoidable is when you reduce precincts from 900 to 600, you are going to create issues with people who have been drawn into the same precinct with each other, with people who where they happen to live. I mean, I think there was a big discussion in the county board when you guys were talking about your own maps that you drew, about whether or not one would or would not use incumbency as a criteria for drawing the map lines. And that's when you only had 6 districts to draw. When you have 600, it's unavoidable that there's going to be some people who are not happy with the way the maps turn out. And certainly we're open to constructive criticism on how that process could have been better massaged. But in terms of the legislative mandate that we all receive from the state, that was a lot to get done very quickly, and I think our staff did a great job doing it. And if anyone has questions about any of the technical matters of why the lines were drawn the way they were, we're certainly happy to go into as much detail as required for that.
Thank you, Adam. Member Garcia, go ahead, please.
Yeah, a couple of questions, if I could ask. The HART, to refer back to Member Tornatore's question, the HART election equipment, I thought it was print on demand. So I thought each polling place kind of had their own printer. There's not like one printer per polling place. Am I correct in that, or?
So we have, even prior to this precinct redistricting, we have multiple precincts combined in individual polling places. So it's not as simple as each precinct has its own printer. Now we are, assuming these precinct maps are passed and we move forward with them, we have begun the process of matching up polling places with the precincts and figuring out which precincts would be combining into a single polling location and where those locations would be. We do anticipate that this process will reduce the number of polling locations. It will not reduce the number of polling locations as dramatically as it reduced the number of precincts, because again, we have multiple precincts assigned to individual polling places. And again, you're not really reducing the number of voters by reorganizing it this way. But we will have further information, assuming that the precincts are approved by the board as we move forward with the new layout of the polling locations. And we do anticipate that there will be some reduction. Now, again, that's balanced out. We're looking to potentially increase the number of early voting locations. There may be more, printers at a given polling place because now it's handling a higher number of voters. So we do still feel that the amount of equipment we have in hand is appropriate for the eventual layout of the voting locations we will have.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I had was, if these are not approved today, what would happen? I'm not sure of the next steps.
I might pass that question to the state's attorney's office.
From a practical standpoint, the maps that are currently in existence stay in effect until they're altered. So this would basically mean the status quo is maintained if you don't keep them, if you don't amend them. I will point out that even regardless of this, the precincts are supposed to be amended every 10 years after the decennial census to make sure that they conform to the boundaries of legislative and congressional maps. From another pragmatic perspective, and I'd have to ask the clerk about this, the old maps, depending how the precincts are drawn, may have more split precincts than these maps.
Yeah, Member Renahan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, kind of doubling down on that same question. I think the legislation actually, provides for what would happen if we would fail to make that decision today. Connor, have you had a chance to look at the specific language?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it. As I said, the status quo would be maintained barring the passage of a map. So
And then would we have to take action then in July or something, or what is it?
the next opportunity, I believe, is by July. I would point out that that might be less than ideal, because as I recall, you're going to have just completed a primary election where, as I recall, precinct committeemen will have been elected from old precincts.
Right.
That's a bit, I'm not familiar at all with what the law would say as to what happens if you redistrict and re-precinct after you've already elected precinct committeemen to a term.
So we'll have Member Zay and then Member Covert. I just like to make a comment. And Member Zay, you did go in though last week with Ken Beal, the chair of the Democratic Party, to review the maps.
I did. After I had sent an email requesting a meeting, I had talked to Scott McKay back in early December about getting in. He said they were working on it. They would have us in to look at the maps. That's a lot different than me calling him every week asking what's going on, and then a week prior to us approving it, basically showing us a map, no input, just saying, here's the map. And here's a copy and thanks for coming. It's a lot different than actually getting a chance to look at it. Again, there was no input whatsoever. I mean, I don't think we're looking for major changes, but possibly some minor changes to, get some people that, have some input whatsoever in it. There was no input.
But
at all in this.
you could have given input at that time, though. I'm sure they would have
no.
allowed you to make changes to that.
No, there was no input. We're not changing anything. Here's the map. That's
Well, the
what
maps were
meeting
sent
was.
to us with questions that we got on Thursday, so I'm just curious as to why nobody, brought this up after the maps were distributed on Thursday too, as well, any of the board members. And I talked to my party chair yesterday several times, and the subject never came up, and there was, as far as I'm concerned, there's no concerns on that end. But anyways, members, I know you had a question, so go ahead and continue, please.
Yeah, Adam, the County Clerks Association lobbied for this legislation along with their own county clerk, right? So this should be no surprise that this legislation was passed, because the Clerks Association and our DuPage County Clerk lobbied for this legislation.
That's correct. There is no surprise that it was passed, but I don't
Well,
know that I could speak for the whole board, whether everyone in here is in favor of it. But regardless of what your position is on the policy, it is the law, and we're now required to.
Well, you pushed for the law change. You can't say we were mandated. You kind of wanted this, you knew it was coming. So you can't kind of say, well, we had to do it because the state passed the law. The Clerks Association, our clerk was down there lobbying for this legislation to pass. So this is kind of, you got what you asked for. I mean, in the past, like MemberGarcia had said, there had been some input. And that's what we're talking about. There's no input here whatsoever. And, I heard a lot of it when we did our redistricting, that we didn't have enough input. Even though we had a bipartisan committee and we did meeting after meeting after meeting and open, forums and a couple open forums for people to have comments. Then for this to come out, it seems just typical when there's map drawing here, that from legislative to congressional to whatever, it just seems to be one side puts it forward and the other side doesn't have any input whatsoever.
Just to clarify, when you say one side, these maps were drawn by the staff of our office. There was no preferential input given to either political party in the drawing of the map. So these maps were drawn by the staff with the sole purpose of meeting the legislative requirements and best serving the administrative interests of the election.
The clerk had no input?
Correct. The clerk was not involved in the drawing of the maps.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Zay. We have Member Covert, and then Member Krajewski, do you have a question as well, or no?
No.
Okay, Member Covert, and then Member Schwarzy.
Yeah, I just had a really quick question, just to piggyback off of what Member Renahan was asking. First, do we have an opportunity to make those minor tweaks if we wanted to? And second, if we voted down these maps today, would there have to be a special call on Friday? And so if we did vote it down today, we would still have the opportunity to work together to make those changes? Whatever changes that people are asking.
So as has been pointed out in the legislative language, it is the county board that approves the precinct maps. So we have proposed a set of maps that our staff believes comports with the legislative requirements. At that point, it is in your hands. And if those maps are not approved, then, as Connor said, that's, where we'll be. And, if you as a legislative body approve a different set of maps, then those would be the maps.
Okay, Member Schwarzy and then Member Chowski, then Member Tornatori. Go ahead, Member Schwarzy.
Thank you very much. After listening to the conversation this morning, I do have a concern that if these maps don't pass today, the confusion and the problematic the problems that will happen may outweigh maybe approving maps that not everybody's happy with. So I do have that sincere concern, and whether or not we can get a group together or work with the clerk's office to come up with something in the next 3 days, too many cooks spoil the broth sort of thing. So I will probably be voting for these maps only because I think the problems of not voting for way outweigh the problems of voting for it. So.
Thank you, Member Schwarzy. Member Pachowski, Member Tornary, then Member Ozak. Go ahead.
When we had redistricting, we had a variance that we were looking at as percentage wise. Was that done in this case? I mean, what is it? Is it a variance of 5% from the existing precinct, or do we not know that?
So the language, I believe, and Connor can correct me if I'm wrong, is as close as practicable or something to that effect. So there's not a specific percentage variance, but our staff is directed to, as close as possible, hit the 1,200 voter target. But again, when you're looking at also the other parameters of, making those precinct boundaries comport with the congressional lines. Sometimes, congressional lines don't particularly respect township boundaries. It's not quite as precise as the percentage variance that you have for the county board districts.
Was there a policy that was implemented to try to keep boundaries close to what they were as we had in redistricting, or was there a different formula that you guys used for drawing these new maps?
I don't know if I would say there was a policy to try to keep it as close as possible. Certainly we were working from the existing maps as a starting point when the policy was to comport with the legislation. But obviously we have, existing precinct boundaries. Those boundaries already, are drawn around certain, facets of the county in terms of, population centers and major roads. So obviously it was the existing precinct boundaries were, worked off of as the starting point.
In redistricting, we had committee meetings where we would come in, each person would meet with the district that was next door, and we would work something out. That wasn't done here, though. We had no input from anybody that says what they would want this precinct to be or their precinct to be as we had in redistricting. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, there was not as much time as there was for the county board redistricting when this was a 60-day project to do for the entire county. And also, there is the question of, how to, productively incorporate, those different, pieces of commentary. And again, if that's something the board, thinks, could or should be done, differently, we're certainly, open to that feedback. But, our primary goal was making sure that we had something within 60 days that passed legislative muster.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Tornatori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only good thing about this is that the reality is it's not going to change the amount of voters who are going to be voting in our district. Okay, and I get that. And perhaps some people were missing my point. I tried to make a bipartisan point here. Nobody was brought in from either party to be a participant. And that when we're dealing with what appears to be a political decision regarding precincts, and that's what it is, because these are political elections that we have for committeemen. I think that's problematic. I was also very clear in establishing there was no criticism to the clerk's office here from me. I think the fact that I didn't call somebody on Friday, the day after I got the map, and I waited till today, and that's a criticism of me, is astounding to me, quite frankly. I mean, now is the day that I'm supposed to be able to ask these questions. And I still don't, other than what you've told us today. That's the only presentation we've had here, other than what we received via email. whether or not we vote on this, we're gonna get stuck with this. And I'm just angry at the fact that our feet are being held to the fire without any representation to vote on something that is going to affect the people who help us get elected, some of whom have been voted out essentially of their precincts as elected committee persons that we have to then go back to our townships and deal with. And we now have no opportunity and haven't had any opportunity to try to come up with some kind of consensus. I agree with Member Schwarzy. The attempt to make some minor changes here between now and Friday is a fool's errand. It's going to be a waste of time. So, if I vote no on this, which I'm going to do, it's a protest vote. I mean, I'm angry at the fact that we were not brought in and that you and or the clerk and or the election commission got stuck with doing this. And somehow or another, the parties that are most affected were kind of left moving in the wind here without any participation whatsoever. Just flat out wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Tornatori. And I know we used to hear from members all the time, if you have questions, get them in before. And that's all I was asking. Of course, we welcome all your questions here today, but I'm just saying, with township people, and whatever, or if you're hearing from people about their precinct, send an email to the clerk, people that were getting complaints from their township people. So with that, we'll move on to Member Ozak and then Member Rutledge, and then Member Chavez, and then Member Garcia. So Member Ozak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to concur with Member Schwarzy's idea that if we're not going to do anything really constructive by Friday, but I think what would be constructive is that this precinct issue is added to the charge of the redistricting committee. And I think that's where the ball has been dropped. And I'm, again, not blaming anyone, not the clerk, not the committee, et cetera. But I think that, again, this is only done every decade. And I think that by putting that as a charge for the redistricting committee, the committee continues to meet and is part of this process, and thus can bring these issues to the board and represent issues that the various board members may have. But obviously the legislation changes the complexion of the precinct issue, by a third, which is considerable. So there may not have been a great deal of input that we may have been able to have, but I think giving that charge to the redistricting committee is something where we could all agree that the ball would not be dropped. And again, I'm not blaming anyone, but I will be voting in favor of this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ozak. Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. I also will say, not putting a blame on anybody except for the state of Illinois, that through this legislation seems to almost penalize the townships that have been effective in recruiting precinct committee people. So for me, that's where I'm most troubled by this, that my own township is not affected by that, but there are several townships that are going to throw contested races to the precinct committee people. And for me, I just have a real problem with that. The other question I would have on that note is, I'm going to assume that most of the people sitting in this room are elected PCs for their townships. And if these maps are throwing them into a contested race, I don't believe they should be voting on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rutledge. Member Chavez, then Member Garcia, then Member Pachewski. Go ahead, Member Chavez.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the timeline though. I think redistricting was under a very tight time frame, so we moved a lot of stuff up. We got things done early. I really wish that had we known that it was going to take until the deadline to get these maps done, that we would have been alerted. I know I had talked to Adam probably mid-December and said, when are we going to see these maps? Because I was getting a lot of pressure from my township chairs. They wanted to see these, to approve them, to look at them. When we say that we got these maps on Thursday, immediately when I got them, I sent them out to my township chairs. Both of my townships said it took them about 5 to 6 hours to sit down to plot out all their PCs, to find out where these discrepancies were. So they did that through the weekend. And so I was literally getting text messages up until midnight last night. There really wasn't time to do this. So even though it's just not enough. And so maybe in the future, we need to look at bringing in a consultant like we did for redistricting. Maybe this is just too much work for the clerk's office to do. But ideally, this would have been done mid-December. We could have had some public hearings. I think both parties are actually as disappointed with this process. So I do concur with Member Tornatori that this just isn't right. I don't think we should be pushing through these maps just because we're under a deadline. We shouldn't be approving a quote unquote questionable product just because. I think we should make these minor tweaks that Members A has recommended. We should go to special call on Friday. But I've got constituents who are elected officials. They're elected in their precinct. They work really for us to make sure that we get elected. They're a part of the important process. So I want to take into consideration what they do, what they say. They should have a right to look at these. To Member Rutledge's point, a lot of these PCs don't even know if they're in a contested election yet. They haven't really dug deep into these maps. So I don't know if I am. I'm currently appointed, but I would like to run in my neighborhood. My neighborhood's changed. So it's just messy right now, and we're on a really tight time frame.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Member Garcia, then Member Krzyzewski, then Member LaPlante.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Chaplin. I have to be honest, I'm an elected PC, and I am now in a competitive race with someone who I considered a coworker on the team, and I really don't want to run against these people, but I do think I have to vote on this because it isn't just a vote for my precinct, it's a vote for DuPage County. I'm going to have to concur with Member Schwarzy. I think that this is, I see everyone, I agree, this is the most frustrating experience ever with these precinct maps. But we're going to get to a point like State's Attorney stated that we're only going to get, if we don't approve these, we aren't able to get the changes in by Friday, then we're not going to get to maybe make changes till after July and after all the PCs. And so then maybe people will get kicked out of office, and that's going to be, it's going to be a headache. So I am going to vote yes on these maps today, but I just want to be forthcoming that I am an elected PC.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Member Krzyzewski.
Yeah, thanks, Chairwoman. With regards to this, again, Adam has talked to them yesterday. Staff started 60 days ago. They should have been in front of us, asking us if they wanted to take into consideration where PCs are at. I mean, the county board's in charge of doing that. In the past, when they went from less precincts to more, and they were cutting them in half, I was in with the election commission with the Democrat Party chair or township chairs, and they had all the precincts there. And I remember one precinct discussing it. They were making it smaller. They were taking a longtime Democrat precinct committeeman out of that precinct, and the chairwoman of the township was not happy with that. Like, I'm fine, just make it a little bigger so they're included in there. And we worked with it, but they should have been here 60 days ago asking if we wanted that. And when they were drawing those maps, they should have taken that into consideration if that's what the policy of this board was. They didn't do that. They had done that in the past when they were making the precincts. They went from 700 to 900. They did that over multiple election cycles. So they kept making it bigger. Now the legislature is going back the other way, and we're shrinking them. And there are people in there. That's why I had asked yesterday, because they didn't see anything. What input did we have? It sounds like zero. Staff just went, but staff should have come to us, the clerk should have come to us and asked us how we want it done. It seems like from the conversations here on both sides of the aisle, I would like to have seen where certain committee members at, and is it affecting them? Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but you're putting two people in against each other, or three against each other, or nobody. I mean, but if you wanted that input, if that's how we want to do it as a board, we could say like we did for the forest or the county board district, we don't care where the people live at. So again, nothing we can do about it today, but that should have been done 60 days ago.
Yeah, and just for clarification, I don't know if this redistricting or this redrawing of the precincts was different from prior because of the legislative requirements. Does that play any impact? And I know there's frustration, but when you're going from 930 precincts to 607 precincts, we're going to lose committeemen. It's just a fact. We cannot keep all of them. And there are going to be contested races. And this is the legislation that says you have to go to 607, right? Am I correct, Adam, on that?
It said that you had to comport with these
1200.
Requirements. So
So-
could I just speak to a second, because I do believe that Member Krzyzewski hit the nail on the head in his last comment on that. if the board has a policy preference for, drawing the maps around the locations of existing precinct committee people, taking into account, both Republican and Democrat, and attempting to draw lines that, play to the preferences of, individual currently elected PCs of both parties, then that's certainly a policy choice that the board can make. The legislative language talks about precincts as a unit of organization for the voter that is meant to, meet certain legislative boundaries, certain size boundaries, and be geographically contiguous for the convenience of the voter. And so those are the mandates that our staff worked around. And certainly if the board has a policy preference for a different approach or a different set of lines that are drawn around the locations of existing elected committee people of both parties, that is absolutely the board's prerogative.
Do we have any further discussion on this? Oh, I'm sorry, Member LaPlante, and then Member Zay. Member LaPlante, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I feel like we are everyone is saying basically the same thing. So in that sense, we have all reached bipartisanship on this effort, right? Because there seems to be equal frustration. I would say, to distill it down to its most basic nature, what we are all saying are variations on the theme of a lack of communication. So your quote was, "It is the county board that approves the precinct maps." That's the legislative order, correct?
I don't know if that was my quote, but that is the gist of things, yes.
Okay, so that's our job. And we weren't given enough information in a timely fashion to do our job. That's what I'm feeling, what I'm hearing expressed, and that's what I'm feeling, is that in order to do my job to the best of my ability, I need as much information and opportunity for input as possible. So that's what makes, that's a real regret. And the fact that, we're talking about missed opportunities and next time, but the fact is the next time is 10 years away. So to make this sort of, and people keep using the phrase drop the ball. The ball has been dropped, the ball has been dropped. We can't pick up that ball for 10 more years. So that's what's frustrating to me. I feel that the lack of communication has impacted my ability to do my job as a board member. And I really wish that we could have more communication and that we could look at these maps, and we could have back and forth. I think that's what I'm hearing from everyone. And so I think that that's the issue distilled down, that I would love to have, hear a response to that, very specific. Thank you so much.
If I can respond to that, the legislation says the county board shall change the boundaries of the election precincts after each census. So it was our job to do these maps. Now, I'm looking at it that this legislation was signed on November 15th, right? So that gives you from November, we're going through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, right? So we have a lot of days off in there. We have a lot of employees taking time off, and we have a lot of board members that were out of town on vacations, not available to get these maps drawn. The clerk stepped up, did them. She provided the 2 township chairs with coming in to view the maps. We received the maps on Thursday. Maybe the process wasn't ideal, right? But the way I'm looking at it is the clerk took on this huge responsibility and did it. And she did it, and they did it in a manner that was not political. They looked at the boundaries just like we did in our redistricting committee. We didn't take the addresses of elected officials into account. They did it by roads, contiguous districts. They didn't cut anything off. So again, like I said, redistricting, we all know, is a complicated process. It's not like you can just throw the map up in the air and put these people anywhere. And again, we're going from 930 precincts to 607. And that's based on going to 1,200 voters in a precinct. We are going to lose precinct committee men, and we are going to have contested primaries for this race. And there's really not a lot we can do about it. And if we don't pass this map, it's going to be a disaster come the general election. So everybody really needs to seriously consider that. Member Zay, and then we're going to close on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know the legislations, I don't think it's I think we all agree it's not well done legislation, but I did talk to state's attorney's office yesterday, Mr. McCarthy, that the county board really doesn't have the ability to provide voter information, do we?
I don't know, this is different than redistricting. Redistricting, you're using census data. Census data is publicly available. There are strict statutory confines on what registered, what voter data can be given out and for what purposes it can be used. Typically speaking, everything I've seen, you've got your election authority that performs this service and works with the data and presents the proposed maps to the board. That's what Kane County's done. I know McHenry County actually sent their clerk, they met in December and sent theirs back to the clerk for further consideration in light of some issues they faced. I'm not aware of any county boards that have established what I'll call like a redistricting committee and has sought voter registration data. I'm not as familiar with those regulations, but I do know that they're tightly controlled data.
Right, thank you. I mean, for us to say that we dropped the ball, I don't think we dropped the ball at all. I mean, that's this, you know, we don't, redistricting and doing precincts are two different animals. We're not using census. We're using sensitive election data, which I'm sure political parties don't want the county board to have. But again, the point was we are going to lose precincts, but that number, whatever the number is now, it's supposed to be 1,200. Our resolution says it's 1,050. So who made that decision to go to 1,050 and not up to the 1,200? Why wasn't it 1,000? Why wasn't it 900? I mean, again, it just seems like these were issues that should have been discussed, like Member LaPlante said, with giving us plenty of time. I think that's the frustration. And it's not only the clerk's office, but when we get put in by other departments where we have to pass it by Friday or Thursday or whatever, that this board gets edgy and says, you know, you're boxing us into a corner. And I think this is just another example of that. Not to blame anybody, but we have a job to do. It's not putting us in the best ability to do our job at this point.
Thank you, Member Zay. Okay, and so I think we're going to close the conversation on this. And can we have a roll call on this, please?
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Chavez.
No.
Member Covert.
No.
Member Desart. Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Garcia.
Aye.
Member Hart. Member Krajewski. I'm sorry. Member LaPlante. Member Ozak. MemberPachelski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge.
Aye.
Member Schwarzy. Member Selman.
No.
Member Tornatori. Member Zay. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Krajewski. Six aye, 10 nay.
6 aye, 10 nay. The motion fails. We will probably have to have a special call on Friday then to have another vote on this up or down. And if anybody wants to work with the clerk, Adam, I don't know how we're going to set this up to have board members come in and make suggestions, or how, I guess we can discuss that after this. Okay, thank you. And then informational, does Member Zay or Member Krajewski want to take that one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to receive and place on file A, payment of claims, B, wire transfers, C, appointments, and D, grant proposal notifications.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive on file informational items A, B, C, and D. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Do we have any old business? Oh, go ahead, Member Tornatori.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I know that this is what we just voted on is not going to be brought to county board because it didn't get out of finance, but we're assuming a special call on Friday. I mean, I know that I've got an item board meeting Friday, which is rescheduled. I'm sure other people have concerns as well. And I think this just exacerbates the problem. We got boxed into a corner, and now I don't think it's fair to box us into a corner on Friday. I can't choose. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, whether I'm supposed to be in my state mandated board meeting on Friday morning downtown, or whether I should be here, and I don't want to lose either one of those. So
Sure.
perhaps before you or somebody establishes a special board meeting for Friday, we can get a consensus on what might be a good day for all of us, or a better time on that day.
I think we have to do it by Friday, so we'll have to post the agenda, by Wednesday?
I understand. I just want you to know that I've got a conflict already established on Friday morning.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm not alone.
Okay, and maybe, we'll see what happens in county board, because that's the final vote. So maybe some people will change their minds. I don't know, but
I don't think it's gonna go to county board.
no, it
'cause
won't go.
didn't get
Doesn't
on
it go to
finance.
county board? Oh, no. All right. Well, it won't go. Okay. Okay, so.
That's why I'm bringing it up now.
No.
We can't bring
So
it up later.
Nick, do you have any ideas for how we can do this could we do an evening meeting on Friday? Or
So
Thursday? Well, we
it's
gotta
my
have the
understanding that
notice.
the legislation says it has to be approved by the 15th, which is Saturday. The posting requirements for this make it so that we have to post today for a Friday or Saturday meeting. We can do Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday, anytime. That's up to the board, but we need to post something today in order to set that meeting, and we would not have, my recommendation would be no finance meeting, just go straight to the county board, and then you can debate it and approve that one item at county board.
Mhm.
So that would have to be a coordination with the chairman
Oh.
at that point for a Friday or a Saturday meeting.
Okay, Member Clerk, go ahead, please.
Yeah, will we be given a time, like a few time slots where, like a survey that is sent out to the board members for a Friday meeting?
That's a possibility, I
We
would
could,
think,
we could
right?
definitely see, I mean, my thought would be, if there is the will of the board is to come back for a meeting, I mean, we could pick out a time right now. I mean, what does Friday afternoon look like for everybody? Is that?
Yeah, can you guys check your calendars? 'Cause maybe we can get this done right in here. Yeah, Member Rutledge, go ahead, please.
Friday works for me, but I would have a commitment at 4:00.
Okay.
I mean, is Saturday a better date for
No,
everybody?
Not for us, no.
So, I mean, are you
Do us-
Friday at noon?
Or Friday evening?
Two.
And
What's that?
Friday evening?
It's whatever the board wants. We can.
Okay,
set up.
I'll do this. How about who can make it Friday morning? Can we see a show of hands? Like, let's say 8 o'clock, Friday morning. Okay, so we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Friday morning. What about Friday afternoon? Like, let's say 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So Friday afternoon at 2 looks good. And then what about like Friday evening at 7? 3. So why don't would you all be comfortable? Sam, does that work for you Friday at 2?
That'd be fine. Sure. Yeah, Friday's okay. Sure.
Okay, so why don't we, what was it?
Yeah, one's fine. I can
Does
get
one
back-
work?
I can get back by 1. That's fine.
Okay, could you make it at 1 o'clock? So it's, I'm sorry, can you turn on your microphone? Yeah, I can't hear you. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into this just because of me, and I know that people got. If we were to do it at 8 o'clock on Friday, my board meeting doesn't start till 10:30 or 11. I could probably do it early in the morning if that works for everybody else. I'll figure out a way to either Zoom in, but I can do early morning or 1 o'clock.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Hang on 1 second. Okay, wait, 1 second.
That's fine.
Okay, Sadia, go ahead.
Sure, I could do Monday morning too. I'll just switch around my court dates. I could do Monday morning then.
No, it's Friday morning.
Oh, sorry, Friday morning. Yeah. I could switch around my work schedule on Friday morning and make it Friday morning.
Okay,
But
should
I
we
just
do
can't do
Friday more?
afternoon.
Should we want to do, Sam, do we want to do maybe 7:30? Would that?
I'm fine with anything. Whatever you guys decide, I'll figure it out.
How
I'll
are we
make
gonna do
myself.
this?
Whenever Julie is here, I'll be able to.
Now we just have to make sure the chairman is available, right? Yeah, go ahead, member Schwarzy.
Is this coming in and making a vote on a finished product that we're going to see ahead of time? Or is this coming in and having a debate on boundaries?
I hope it's a finished product. I'm hoping that the people that want to make the changes get together with the clerk's office, make the changes, get us a new map and post it as soon as possible so people can look at it and, do we have to have the map? So the map doesn't, hasn't, so.
We can say that we're gonna discuss it, but yes, I mean, Friday would be the final version of whatever the board works out with the clerk. The clerk will have to arrange times to meet with all the board members, and the finished product needs to be brought to board on Friday.
Great, thank you. Okay, member Tornatori.
So this meeting that is going to take place sometime Friday, is that a finance committee meeting or a county board meeting? Gotta be a county board meeting because we have to.
We're gonna go straight to county board. We're gonna have to discharge finance.
Discharge finance, okay.
And if it's in the morning, we'll have to, the board will have to discharge its own rule for 72-hour notice, because we cannot do that, but it'd still be a legal meeting as long as the board discharges that requirement. It's a board requirement.
Okay. Whenever you guys are ready, I'll be available.
New set of maps. Okay, so we will plan tentatively, because we have to check, make sure the chairman is available, to have a county board meeting Friday at 8 a.m. Okay, all right, any new business? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Member Schwarzy, second by Garcia. All those in